only to find the faint glow of my visor's heads-up display. The words, "Hostile targets, 0. Civilian casualties, 0. were displayed briefly the top left corner, and I got a strange feeling that my seemingly flawless engineer may have had some flaws. And I marked that trapped mare green and I shoved the thought out of my head. The thing must have relabeled her hostile without me noticing. Looking beyond the words as they flickered out of existence and blinking dust from my eyes, I noticed a smooth warmness pressing against my flattened muzzle. It was as stiff as a wooden plank, yet it was twitching softly. My eyes steadily blurred into focus to see the image of a stark red flower. That was, in fact, the tip of a golden key. A cutie mark? It didn't take me long after that to realize I landed on top of my would-be savior, and that my face was both satisfying and uncomfortably close to her haunches. Usually I'd have no problem, but raider victims, no touchy-touchy. Shakily, I stood up, forcing the breeze to tumble off my back and fall into a dusty heap on the stained carpet. Looking about, I found out to vomit at the side of the room, painted with a splattered coat of red. Fortunately, none of the walls had collapsed, although I guess having a defensive office in the factory of potentially armed employees was standard back before the bombs. Even so, I could still hear no gunfire past the soft ringing in my ears. Either a star has gone the last of the efforts below, or the timely explosion had just shut every pony up for a few minutes. Regardless, I'd find out soon enough. Yet my mind was unnervingly focused elsewhere. There was no amount of restraint I could throw out to reel it in. She sacrificed her own fault? Raider or not, that was beyond barbaric. And for what? Mr. Red's words. They tried to have me killed daily, came to mind. Yet a great deal of my mind refused to believe that bomb had been set up for such a purpose. Did that fool even know? Or did it just think that mine was some sort of metal apple? I stared coldly into the scorched corner as if hoping my gaze could revert the time if I just tried hard enough. Screw you, Slam, for handing the incarnation of my one rule and a live grenade and just walking away like it doesn't matter, while just waiting for it to blow up in the face of my morals, I internally screamed. Still, like a fool, I just held on to that grenade until it went off in my face. I took a breath, scowling at the thought before some sense finally reached me. Damming up my range, I looked down to the cowering mare between my legs. She was curled up, stiff and whimpering, behind her tightly locked eyes. "I'm sorry. Please just stop," she begged in a faint whisper. I shook my head free of the horror I'd just witnessed. They were dead, and I couldn't bring them back. But God has damned me if I don't help the one I'd save. No, Dragonfire, don't let it get to you. You might as well just shoot yourself right now if that's the case. That bold mental statement was enough to silence my guilt, at least for now. "Don't worry, I'm not gonna hurt you," I said, as kindly as my subbed anger would allow. The mare opened one lime green eye hesitantly, giving a wet sniffle. "You, you're not one of them, are you?" she stuttered in a frail voice as she looked at me carefully. I managed to smile. Seeing her alive, at least, was reassuring. Ignoring the foul things that had transpired around me allowed me to smile because I'd still saved at least one pony. She tensed before she then relaxed and shivered as she did so. Her other eye opened and looked up to the fallen desk, the likes of which thankfully hid the profound amount of charred crimson paint from her view. Before she could notice, I stepped back slowly and levitated the table towards the epicenter of the bloody explosion, covering it best I could. Nobody needed to see that, especially a pony who had just been through what I could only guess was hell. Her head twitched back to me, eyes wide with fright, only to calm slightly when she discovered I wasn't directly anything to her. "What are you doing?" she sniffled, her voice growing firmer. Still, her shimmering gaze begged the goddess that her rescue wasn't some kind of cruel joke. I'm getting you out, of course. I can't leave you here." I improvised swiftly, hiding my true motivations carefully. She flinched again at the idea, before shivering violently. I winced slightly, not really feeling like I was making a good first impression. Or it may just be the fact that, as of late, she was only used to seeing ponies that raped and abused her before using her as a meat shield. Thanks, Brain. Good evaluation. Still, it was at least partly right. And the last thing I wanted was to be seen as any of those horrid things. Beating back at my negative emotions to the best of my ability, my horn flared again, and with a cool dash of air against my sweat, land, and mane, I lifted off my helmet. Maybe now I'd look more like a pony and not some Steel Ranger wannabe. Not that I want to look anything like any one of those. Hell, never mind. My timid new friend looked at me cautiously as she seemed to relax a little more, her groveling eyes scoring every detail, noting everything that may give anyway what kind of pony I truly was. Her ears perked sharply at the sound of the rabble beginning below, as did mine. So Star had bested the raiders then. Not that I had had any doubts. I glanced back to the door and said, "Looks like you're all free now." I looked back to the mayor, who met my rubbed positivity with weary skepticism. She glanced away again, assessing the room before finally opening her muzzle. "This isn't a joke, is it?" she asked. I shook my head. "Not unless it's on me," I told her kindly, full that I was gonna be suffering from what I'd just seen and heard for a while. Trying not to fall apart that trap just yet, I offered her a friendly hoof. Once again, my good-willed emotion was met by a cautious glare. If she'd seen this gesture many times recently, I doubt it had been for the same good reason. Months of caution later, however, she proved she was still enough of a free pony to take my aid. "I'm Dragonfire," I told her while helping her to her hooves. She swallowed nervously before swiftly replying, "Cherry Pin." She said the name as if it tasted bad. Then again, I doubt she thought she'd get a chance to say it again. Nevertheless, I simply nodded in response. "Nice to meet you," I said, with the widest smile I could muster, placing my helmet back on my head with my magic. All the smiles in the world weren't gonna do me any good. I just need to get out of the wasteland. I'd done my job now, and I had moved on, just like always. Otherwise, the wasteland would just eat me up. But what I saw, that wasn't a monster. The cold wasn't a... I'd failed to save him. I'd had a chance to do more. Enough time to think, and I'd fail. I shook my head. Never let it get to you again, I cursed myself internally. Never let the world's shite make you angry again. I knew that seeping back into those dark memories was not a place I ever wanted to go again. And for once my recriminating brain was more than in agreement. I kicked at another pile of pink ash as we passed it by. Another shot, another disintegrated blood spray. Fortunately, the putrid flood waters were shallower here on the east side of town. I was grateful for that more so, as behind us charged about 30 or so exhausted slaves. Most were still able to walk, though some small foals were being carried on the backs of what I assumed were their parents. Upon finding my way back down to the originally open raider graveyard, I spent a few long minutes opening cages and hoping I wouldn't have to carry any live pony. Not me, not now. By the god, it's not full. All I wanted to do was get these ponies back to town, assuming there was something left of it, and try and forget all about today. Apparently, the whole iron shod factory setup was just a ploy by Mr. Red, whoever the hell he was supposed to be, to keep the town contained. Give a pony a care and you'll feed them for a day. Give a pony a care farm. I thought of it as something along those lines. More like to keep the town weak, but alive and keep taking ponies that come in. At first, I didn't buy it. That cool buck did strike me as the clever type. Give him an army of raiders, and that sounded like what a mind like his would do. Yet he was a slaver, a member of the Brazen Skulls, no less. So why did he need to work with raiders? Not to mention this far away from Crimson Springs, the town those Pacific slavers occupied. The term under new management didn't bode well with me either. I never really had any idea who was in charge of that rabble, but I didn't know it had been roughly the same for the past few decades before I came here even. This? Well, this was a worrying break from that norm, like a small fracture in the thin sheet of ice, the first step in the complete shattering. So what's really got you all quiet? Star asked, seeming to notice my thoughtful silence. I told him I'd seen the hostage killed, but Star hadn't worked with me as long as he had without being able to sense when I was lying. I see a lot of good ponies die before. However, their deaths hadn't shaken me like this. His attitude was different too. He had yet to make a single word comment about how many raiders he'd kill or how many ponies he'd save. If I had been all fine and dandy, we have been arguing about that all the way to Bucktown. No, he knew something was up. I was in the wrong for not opening up about it. The information that I was withholding would affect how we worked out here in the wastelands as well as who we conducted businesses with. I took a deep breath, knowing I was going to have to tell him what happened eventually. So why not now? Star, those bastards murdered a fool in cold blood, I uttered bluntly, the words tasting foul in my mouth. As someone hoped the sound of many hooves in the water would drown out the rushed confession, my eyes turned upward to the large rock for just a moment to see him looking down at me. Then my gaze scampered timidly. Dragon, you helped save a dozen fools back there, and they're raiders. That's what they— Its mother killed it! I growled angrily, kicking my hoof through the water as through venting my frustration regarding what had happened might somehow lessen my anger at the freaking sick psychopathy these raiders scum were. Star fell silent, and the horrifying image played out in my mind several times before I finally calmed myself. It wasn't just that. In fact, I had no idea if my blunt assumption was correct. The real reason as to my furious anger was that I'd failed. Although that wasn't what was hitting me hardest either. No. It was what she'd done. It was more than monstrous. And for what? To kill a leader the others didn't like? She'd sacrificed a tiny fool for that. I wasn't angry. That had faded into a feeling of heartache. I was devoid of most feelings as I thought about it. How can anybody go to so much trouble to make somebody else and then— I stopped, my eyes closed in threatening tears. I couldn't do that. I couldn't. I couldn't give birth to a fool. Not like what the freaking raider had done. Then killed it in cold blood and with no hesitation. Suddenly the sound of Star's hooves in the water stopped, and I felt a firm hoof over my back. My eyes opened to see the three of the armored tree trunks that were his legs still in the brown sludge behind me. The other lay gently over me. I sniffled, shaking away the tears before they could clog up my visor. Hey, now you don't go beating yourself up over this stuff again. It's the goddess's loss for not letting there be another great pony like you out here, he told me comfortingly. I sniffled, my muzzle whining before quivering into a smile. He was right. I was too good. It was their loss. More ponies like me and the wasteland would be a brighter place in no time. Unless it was that metaphorical fricker that was preventing me from— No, brain, just shut up. I gave Star an appreciative nod before he lowered the hoof. I saw a guy, you big oaf, I called to him as he continued along the street. I remained still for a long moment, the first of the slaves passing me with curious, sympathetic looks before I finally released my mind back into the wasteland. There were eyes that fell upon the familiar pink unicorn mare with flower blossom, key cutie mark. She was in a slightly better state than the rest of them, although I didn't think it my rightful place to judge how serious her torture had been. Another thing I tried not to think about was the fact several of them had not survived. Sugar Cube, Sunbeam, and Cherry Pen. I recalled her name urgently. The mare I recently saved was still shivering violently, her ears and eyes twitching nervously in every direction. The look on her anxious face said she didn't want to be here, near ponies, and yet she didn't want to be alone either. Not that she struck me as a pony who'd admit it. After seeing her assault her captor, I got the feeling that deep down, she wasn't just some submissive, victimized type, even though she had been traumatized. Furthermore, she was still limping slightly. I'd offered one of my healing potions for the wound on her hind hoof, and knowing that magical healing bandages would most likely not keep out many of the infections that were surely lurking in the foul water. She'd taken a while to assess whether or not my offer was genuine, and ever longed to finally accept it. But it was nice to see she trusted me enough not to assume I was giving her poison or something. "Hi," I introduced abruptly, slipping into the crowd beside her. Again, she looked worried, but far less towards me than she had towards Star or any of the other larger slaves for that matter. Hi, she replied, her tone giving me the vibe that I was somehow making this really awkward. I swallowed nervously. Come on, Dragonfire, you know how to talk to ponies. Even recently escaped, traumatized, slave ponies. That, uh, that was back there. That was quite impressive. If it weren't for you, we might all be a great conversation starter, Dragonfire. Just go ahead and remind her of the most intense situation of her recent life. As expected, she just looked at me with those cowering eyes. Yet ever so slightly she blushed and looked away. My ears perked. She liked that. She was humbled ever so slightly. No, really, if that been be one brave pony and sold a guy like that, I added encouragingly, feeling strangely like some sort of fanfilly. Sherry's puzzled gaze looked back at me, the hints of caution slowly fading. You really think so? I mean, I was only there for a few days, but they... She instantly shut up at that. The memory of whatever she had gone through caused her to put her guard back up, and their conversation ended abruptly and no less awkwardly as it had begun. Time would tell whether or not this trauma would make her stronger, or torment her mind and spirit until her death, regardless of how proud of a pony she was. Damn it, Dragfire, you were doing so well, my mind groaned. The term so close to perfect it hurts was being tossed on there somewhere too, literally making my head ache. I'm sorry. I didn't want to upset you. I apologized, feeling both awkward and uncomfortable, trying to dismiss the topic with an equal awkward wave of my hoof. A sharp emotional sting swiftly twisted into twinge of sympathy for her. Maybe it was because she was kinda cute. I had gotten quite a close-up look after all. Or maybe it was the fact I'd save her? She made me feel at least a bit more confident in my abilities. It's my own fault they caught me in the first place. I should have been more careful. She sighed, looking downcast. Yeah, Mr. Red fell right into the trap of not being careful? My mind muttered. Oh, hardy brain, that's not helping. I shook off the snide joke, instead focusing on contemplating exactly what she was telling me. Her fault? I'd heard enough ponies in her situation say that to last a lifetime, and even more who'd fallen to the depression, not discounting myself. No, that was just... My mind shut up before I could finish, like a timid fool that had just senselessly blurted out profanity to its mother. Yeah, keep it that way, brain, I warned dangerously. That was not the point of this. She was Cherrypin. Such a nice name. Not tainted by the idea of killing her death like so many others. She wasn't gonna let her fall into the same trap I had years ago. The first thing I knew, telling her this wasn't her fault, even if I was sure it wasn't, was not going to work. You got anywhere to go? I asked, avoiding the previous topic. She looked back up at me closely. I I came from Buck. I I came out here after my friends, but she faltered, eyes dropped strapping to the sledge under our hose. I couldn't help but feel that the two dead mares I'd seen dead in Mr. Red's office were both friends of hers. Very cute and sweet son. Brain, by the goddess, you make an effort to remember those names. Now she was gonna have to live with the fact that she'd failed them. I also was gonna have to admit I'd fail all of them too. No, damn it. I promised myself that I wasn't gonna fail her. Where are you gonna be staying in Buck tonight? You can tag along with me if you want, I offered calmly, before wincing at the many ways I knew that could be interpreted. Her initial expression almost confirmed my fears, and then she managed to smile. You sure? I mean, if it's... She stuttered timidly. I dropped the heartfelt smile ever so slightly, partly not to seem attentive to the fresh grief of having lost two of her friends, but also so that I might not come across as an utterly shameless flank chaser. It's no problem, I assured her. It would be no problem, I mentally added, addressing the more promiscuous parts of my consciousness sternly. She is a mare. She is cute, but she is not, I repeat, is not any kind of sex toy. Nor was she a bug, so that disqualified any other possibilities. Got that, brain? I finalized with a mental admonishment, much with the stern reproach of the parent who caught their foal doing something contrary to the values that they tried to instill within their offspring. My mind's more perverted side scurried back to its den like a frightened rat roach, much to my satisfaction. The other loud boom rang out, startling every pony around me. My head perked, ears standing to attention as I realized that it was a gunshot. Who goes there? This Selma is under guard, a bug's voice called from a towered up somewhere in the ruins above. Bucktown? So it had survived? The revelation caused me much concern. It set my thoughts regarding Mr. Red and whatever operation he was running out here. The evening had swiftly fallen into twilight over the ruins, scattered about which were several newly improvised lookout towers. An emphasis on new. Most of them had been torn down by multiple raider attacks, as evident by the mangled rubble at their bases. It seemed the same NCR hospitality package had been gifted here as well, but that only resulted in greater awareness that a population center of some sort was likely located nearby the lookout towers were located, which increased the chances that more opponents could be captured for the raiders and by extension Mr. Red and the rest of the Brazen Skulls to take. Still, after a warning shot, another rather stupid gesture given the fact that we were raiders, why would we be bringing back the slaves? We'd managed to get every pony through safely. Just ahead of us, the slaves were tentatively making their way back into the battered walls of Bucktown. The town was formed from a steep pile of concrete scraps and rusted rebar from the surrounding ruins, not to mention the razor wire along the top. The place looked more like a prison than a town, which was made all the more menacing by the crimson light of the dying desert sun. Still, I felt incredulous that not even these incompetent foals of a security force couldn't protect it. Even so, the improvised defenses still bore the many scars of heavy weaponry and even explosives, the latter undoubtedly the Brazen's contribution to the siege effort. Beyond, the sounds of civilization chattered and the glow from fires illuminated the small columns of rising smoke. Starstrike was first through the gate after the majority of the slaves, several of which still lingered nervously outside. A yellow-coated stallion sat in the small concrete bunker at the cage, and he'd been greatly surprised to see more ponies coming and then being dragged out. "Saving slaves! Good on ya," he called the star with a tone of respectful approval. The larger stallion merely nodded in acknowledgement of the yellow buck's compliment. "Indeed," he rumbled, clearly soured by the guard's enthusiasm toward the whole ordeal. I admit that the slaves weren't as happy as I thought they should be, given that they were not only there free, They were returning to the comforts and familiarity of home. These ponies were back home, but for how long? I knew it would take a long time for any of them to even heal, or at least cope with the treatment with which they were treated with me and the horrid sights which they'd seen. Deep down, I really wanted to help them all, but for that, I needed a lifetime, a lot of which had already passed me by. The pink mare standing beside me, however, I wanted to try saving. Sherry didn't seem to find the wall very appealing either. She seemed to regard the inhabitants which it guarded with even less esteem than the wall. After arriving at the entrance to the town, the pair of us had remained on one side of the lightly flooded street while we watched all the other ponies head on in. We'd waited outside of the flimsily fortified hamlet for about half an hour now, and it was becoming increasingly late, not to mention cold. Despite the improvised watchtowers or at least one raider hiding out being out there around night was not on the top of my list of things I want to do. It could be worse off, my mind retorted, then once knowing for once it was right. Reading that depressing line of thought best I could, I looked over with worry at the anxious pony beside me. She regarded the walls cautiously, her ears erect and rotating like the old reception dishes of the old world. I took a deep breath. The warm, foul-smelling desert air wasn't at all refreshing, but at least it was better than the foul sewage on the west side of the ruins. You know, I don't think anybody in here wants to hurt you, I stated calmly, pointing a hoof to the battered walls. She only seemed to flinch more at the word hurt before swallowing hard. I know, that is just... Her reply was cut off by a slight sniffle. I was the one who left, and I was the one who got myself caught, she admitted reluctantly. I clapped my head curiously. Dragonfire, you know telling her it wasn't her fault is a bad idea. For now, anyway. Regardless, I still wanted to know why she was blaming herself, although I suppose every pony had asked the same question of me at one point. Brain, no, I mentally admonished, then frowned. My muzzle was unable to formulate words while I wore the disapproving expression. Jerry looked up, her quivering gaze passing by me before hitting the walls. Then she looked back. I forced a smile. Oh, goddess, please let her sort this obstacle out for herself. You're really something, aren't you? She told me. Damn it, why did you have to go and twist my prayer into something else? This wasn't what I'd asked for, and you... Somebody up there, you knew it. I glanced away as her cautiously inquisitive eyes regarded me. Of course, I'd like to consider myself something. As for what that something was, well, usually it would just be a better pony than every pony else. In more ways than one. Thanks, Cherry Pin's frail voice murmured. I paused now. It was my turn to be in disbelief. She'd thanked me? No, I hadn't expected it or tried to make any of them feel obliged to give it. But she had. And it was nicely sincere. Wow, Dragon, you must be the sappiest merc in the wasteland, my mind snickered. I just pushed a worried thought aside. All I really cared about was the fact that she'd said it, the fact she felt I'd earned it. For saving me, that is, she added quietly, waving hoof tentatively and bowing her head as a hint of embarrassment dawned graced her visage. As my satisfaction grew, my pride didn't diminish. I didn't feel she was a trophy won by the victors on the battlefield. Instead, she was a pony that was still alive and still not suffering at the hooves of the raiders because of me. Despite the massive payment on the horizon, this was somehow payment enough. So are you up for heading in? I asked, hopefully pointing hoof at the sacred walls. The pink unicorn nodded, albeit still subtly, seeming to use the chance to belay her embarrassment. Well, there was still some confidence there at least, and a good deal of the pony she was underneath. While I had no right to judge her mental state or the length of her torture, I couldn't help but feel slightly relieved at this fact. It didn't seem quite as extreme as her fellow slaves. For now, I was just happy she was brave enough to come into town. We could work on her confidence later. Yeah, we could. No, brain, that's not what I meant. I mentally berated my perverted gray matter as my mind conjured another suggestive image of the mirror mind in bed. Oh, for God's sake, you pervert thoughts, shut the hell up! Without giving my mind any time to retort, I turned toward the town entrance with Cherry following closely beside me. Her steady hose on the damp asphalt was a welcome reassurance. Well, how you doing there? The yellow bug by the gate asked happily, leaning forward upon a rocking chair. He was lucky Cherry had greatly improved my mood. If he looked at me anything like he was now about to rescue her, he'd be added to my kill count. That said, I didn't acknowledge his presence other than to ensure that he didn't try any funny business. Instead, I turned to the pink unicorn behind me. She was trying not to look at the mess of concrete attempting to lock her in with the other ponies. Well, y'all gone another rescued our would-be savior too, the guard stated, whistling impressively. Terry flinched, her ears catching the sound of his mocking tone of voice before she lowered her head in shame, her frown deepening, a hot pair of tears hitting the ground beneath her hose. It's nice to see you too, Skipper. She winced, and hearing the choked hitch in her reply, I glancing up at the buck. Skipper just whistled again as she came close to him. It's my pleasure, miss. I focused my eyes and glared with disapproval, my muzzle scrunching into a bare-teeth display of hostility. My ears rotated and lay flat against the top of my head, to reduce the likelihood of teeth or claw tearing at what otherwise would be an exposed target. Is that so? I questioned sharply. Cherry closed her eyes and looked sincerely, confident that I would protect her from any possible outlash the stealing might take, settled beside me. Skipper barked back, whistled again. Sure is that one when thinking she could bring all them slaves back single-hoofed. I mean, gun ya, girl, but you ain't no fighter. You're all a waitress, mare through and through. He didn't seem to notice my dangerous glare at the latter part of his explanation. How could anybody fault her for trying, no matter how dangerous or stupid it was? I didn't see any of them lifting so much a hoof to help the half of their town that had been stolen into slavery. Besides, it wasn't like they fell under the category of fighters any more than she did. I wanted to voice that opinion, but a look at my new companion dissuaded me. This wasn't what she wanted to be talking about. In fact, there was a good chance it was the reason she was so anxious about coming into town in the first place. My simmering frustration at her treatment was quelled by that, but not forgotten. Besides, with an innocent look, she was unbearably cute. Platonically, I added swiftly as my thoughts tried to run off with the idea again. Where'd Star go? I asked Skipper, trying not to growl. The buck swung forward, resting his forehooves upon the concrete barricade between us. What, your big buck friend? He might stray for the saloon, he told me, pointing a hoof at the group of ponies congregating the center town, then to the old pre-war ruin that was up boldly labeled cocktails. At that, I relaxed my dangerous glare. Thank you, I expressed my gratitude politely. Any time, miss, he muttered back, almost subconsciously. It didn't take me many guesses to know where his attention was fixed now that the pair of us had our backs to him. And I could see the majority of the slaves. Some had already found their ways back to what must have been their previous home. Others sat timidly in the muddy town center, like a flock of nervous birds ready to scamper at the first sign of danger. Beyond them I could see several of the security ponies, as well as the town's part-time sheriff, seemingly debated what to do with the many ponies. Ponies they probably guessed were all dead. Around the rabble, on the edge of the muddy square, were several structures. All were shattered pre-war ruins, shabbily renovated over the years with planks of wood and concrete taken from the buildings outside the walls. This, I recognized thankfully, was also the only large piece of dry land in the whole of these goddess-damned ruins. Directly ahead was the town hall, that down as the sheriff's office if their need ever arose. Formerly a police station, it was now the second largest and most secure structure in the town after the equally large Buckaroo's casino beside it. The rusted sign and barred walls of the place paled in comparison to some of the larger casinos I'd seen up north, and the mere fact that it had once been situated beside a police station only dragged its appeal down further. Nevertheless, most of the machines still functioned inside, including a bucking bronco, the rodeo simulator for which the town had got its name, despite being left to rust in the desert that couldn't decide whether it wanted to be a part-time river. To my left were more residential shacks as well as the town clinic, pretty much the same as the one in Churn minus the security, vault, and population. The establishment itself was run by Bone Marrow's brother Bone Meal, and I doubt this serious lack of things I listed sat well with him. Opposite the clinic was Cocktail Saloon, not quite the wildly neon-lit willows. It only bore the glow of firelight from the wood-filled barrels and torches scattered about town. Nevertheless, they did have a generator here, just not an entire functioning hydroelectric plant. Still, I wasn't one for spending my whole evening outside. Now that we'd practically saved half of the place, it was a good enough place to get some rest. That in mind, I began trotting towards the bar almost instinctively. That subconscious motivation was broken a moment later when I had to stop for my new companion. She tensed up once again, her ears fidgeting, her eyes darting nervously to every point that passed her by, none of which showed any interest in her. It made me feel both annoyed and relieved simultaneously. While frustratingly unsympathetic, at least they weren't socially torturing her. That said, I backpedaled cautiously. She flinched as I reappeared beside her, but seemed to relax the second our gazes met. "Do you want to go inside?" I asked, feeling both sickeningly condescending and unfairly demanding. Damn it, I was treating her like a fool. I really didn't want to think about fools right now. It took her a long moment to answer. The whole time I wished I was secretly begging Celestia she'd say yes. If not, then I'd have to stay out here, because by the goddess, I'd let myself become attached again. Are you... are you gonna stay in there? I mean, I don't need you to. If you don't want to, I just... She faltered again, trying to communicate as she was thinking, her tone of voice trailing off again. I turned my attention toward other things as my conscience sought to make me aware of the various emotional traps that I might have fallen into. It was also berating me for the patronizing tone and reminding me of my poor interpersonal skills, which was why most of my diplomacy involved my guns. But the more time that I spent with Sherry and seeing the strength of her character, her will to live, I realized that I was starting to have feelings of affection for this mare. Yeah, don't worry. I'll stick with you, I assured her, unsure of whether I should ask her permission before boldly stating such a thing. Another frail smile later, and her uncertainly assured me that it was not unnecessary. Moments later, I trotted into the bar. Cherry's tentative hooves steps sounded upon the desert dust close behind me, then on the wooden steps as I pushed through swinging saloon doors.